Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone to this Poets and Quants webinar on Study in France. You may have participated in the Study in the UK last week. We've got two sessions this week with Study in France. So my name is Patty Brown. I'm the Associate Dean for MBA and Executive Degree Programs at Oxford Saïd University in the UK. But I worked for many years in France and excited to have two ladies on board with us today. So we'll start off with you ladies can introduce yourself, talk about the school that you chose, a little bit about why you chose this school, and then I'll delve a little bit deeper into your experience and then your outcomes afterwards. Okay, so we'll start with one of my former students, Nina. I can tell you good and bad stories depending on our questions afterwards, but MBAs are always an amazing experience, and everybody that does an MBA is super brave to put their life on hold. So, Nina, talk to us about your adventure. I know it, but everybody else wants to hear about why you chose France, why you chose ESSEC, why you chose a one-year program. Talk to us about you.
Hi, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here. And Patty, may I just say it's so lovely to have you host this panel again. When I first met
Thanks.
Patty, it was in Zoom. So it's a
That's
bit of
true. You're
yes.
so
So
smart. Now we're back in Zoom. Thank God
now
we're
we're
not
back
doing
in Zoom.
COVID anymore. Nina was,
Yes,
for those of you who don't know, a COVID cohort. So some of the
I was.
bravest people that ever went to in and out of an MBA, she was a COVID. Nina, I'll shut up now. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. So it's giving MBA in COVID times again, but life is better, and it's 5 years later. So I'll give a quick introduction. My name is Nina for everyone watching, and it's a pleasure to be here. I joined the MBA at ESSEC Business School in France, as Patty mentioned. I was one of the youngest students. I was 25 years old. I was fresh, barely like knowing my own name, quite frankly. And Patty interviewed me at the time before I got admitted to ESSEC Business School. I did the one-year MBA program specializing in luxury brand management. Prior to joining the MBA, I had a very short but intense career in cosmetics. And for me, the number one goal of living in France was to continue this journey, to really boost my career, to be part of one of the big conglomerates in France, because it is the beauty capital of the world, especially when it comes to fragrance and many cosmetic and skincare brands as well. So my goal was to really have the perfect balance, if I really put it swiftly. I come from the US. I lived for many years in California. I'm Indian origin, but I lived in the US for a long time. So a very natural option would be to continue education in the US, which has excellent business schools, as we know. But I really pushed myself to look outside literally the borders, to move to France, one being the industry, and push my own personal development, learn a new language. By the way, Patty, since you met me, I have come a long way on French. um,
Fantastic. So we're going to do the rest of the Zoom for you two ladies in French. If you're ready, we'll see it. Okay? Alors, vous êtes prêtes, on y va. So, no, Nina, go ahead. Congratulations. That is, I'll come to
Thank you.
that with you ladies also getting in the middle of the program and after the French language, because we all know the French have many qualities. The English language is not one of them. So go ahead, Nina.
So as I was saying, I really came to France because it was a balance really for me. One being quality education with a highly ranked university. Second being a very important factor being alumni, which I cannot stress enough. No matter which business school you choose, that's good for you, depending on your goals, and the alumni who can really boost your network. I mean, that's what business school is about all around the world, irrespective of country. So one being the type of program, two being the alumni, three being cost. Let's also say
Yeah.
it, America is very expensive. So it was a very valid consideration for me, especially in a higher education point of view for anybody looking for a master's or MBA or any kind of post undergraduate education. And then fourth being also personal development. To my earlier point, I think the French language is so important in an industry like cosmetics, although not necessary by any means. It's a personal challenge I wanted to take upon myself. And all ESSEC pretty much checked all the boxes for me. So I was super happy to come. And as a fifth point, also time. I didn't want to spend 2 years doing an MBA. So I really wanted something not quick and sweet, but let's say efficient and productive and meeting my goals. And I believe it really did all of them. And
You know,
fast forward 5 years, I'm very happy. I'm still in France. I'm still in Paris, Patty. If you ever come by again from Oxford,
fantastic. No, that's
um,
Nina, you touched on a point that's super important that we're trying to do with these study-in sessions is talk about the value for money. And
mhm,
in terms of tuition prices, European business programs rate amongst the highest in value for money on the FT
mhm.
ranking. So thank you for touching on that. We'll move over to Carly. Carly, I know your program at EDHEC very well. Sandra Richez is a good friend and fantastic lady. She's pushing that MBA. They've always been a precursor to how is the market adapting? What are we doing? Some of the stuff they put on the EDHEC MBA for next year with the different trips are fantastic. So talk to me a little bit about why you chose a little bit like Nina did, how you chose France, why, how you chose EDHEC to be in, because you have different. Nina's in Paris and you're in beautiful beaches. Your campus looks out on the beach. I mean,
Yes, French
easy
Riviera.
choice for me, but how did you come about choosing EDHEC?
Oh, my journey is slightly different. I think Nita mentioned that she was one of the youngest. I cannot say the same, although I do have a youthful looking glow. I am now 39 years old. So yes, it is a youthful looking
I
glow.
want your skincare routine.
But, but I would say I was a little bit different in that um, I I went through COVID working. My previous experience, actually, I spent about 14 years working in HR. I'm actually from Montreal, so I am Canadian. I do speak English and French. English, obviously, you're hearing me now, but I also do speak French. I often joke that I speak three languages: English, French, and Quebecois, just because the accents and expressions are extremely different. However, I would say that a couple of the same reasons that Nina had in terms of it was not quick and dirty, but it was efficient, cost effective as well. I'm from Montreal, so education is actually quite affordable. I would say that my decision point was actually I went through COVID, kind of sat there. I kind of had that COVID crisis, similar to a midlife crisis, where it was like, is this still really what I'm interested in doing? I love what I'm doing, but I feel like there's a little bit more out there for me. So I really used this 1 year program as a little bit of a sabbatical to kind of take a step back. I know that there's a lot of Gen Zs calling sort of micro retirements right now, and I call it a sabbatical. Maybe others call it a micro retirement. I don't really know, but
I
it
hadn't
was
heard
really
that.
just
That's pretty good. I'll use
I
that.
love it. I'm all here for it. So I kind of took a year out. I really like the program for three main reasons. I would say first, it's global program, so it's really touted on being not just about education in the classroom, but the people that are in your classroom. So we were 78 students from over 30 different nationalities. So a pretty diverse classroom, which was really important for me. I've always worked in very globally minded roles and organizations. And so I think it's really important to have sort of I have a very Western perspective, but then also very important to see how other people are thinking. We live in an incredibly globalized world. So if I wanted to continue being a leader in a global organization, I thought that would be the next best step for me to set me up for success. I would say also very finance oriented as an organization. So I come from professional services. I worked previously at PwC, and then I also worked at a Canadian pension fund. A little bit of commodities here and there, but mostly from financial services. So also having a strong sort of foothold in finance, and third was really the fact that there was a sustainability piece in there too. So again, during COVID, obviously took a little bit of a look at my life and kind of thought a little bit about what are my business practices personally, like how am I voting with my dollar, what am I using with my dollar. And so just wanted to learn a little bit more about sustainable business models and really kind of think about how are we actually going to have how if I want to run a global business in the future, we also need to have a planet. So also kind of thinking through sort of the sustainability aspect there as well. So I was debating between an executive MBA and just
Yeah.
a full-time MBA. And so I think
Yeah.
that I'm not sure kind of who's on who's listening right now, but my main decision was that I wanted to use the time to really take a step out. And I really wanted to
Yeah.
have time I needed the mental space to really think clearly, and I also just like learn again and make learning fun. I went through university and I had a really fun time on the social aspect. I was president of a few clubs and played on all these, soccer teams or football for anybody that's non-Western, and so North American. And so I had a lot of fun. I wouldn't say that I really felt like I got the best out of it. It was a great education and a good time, and I felt like my degree helped me at that point, but really wanted to be a bit more mindful. Spent a lot of time talking with Sandra and in Sandra's office, just kind of talking about the state of the world and where things were going. And we still have coffee frequently. So there you have it.
So are you in Nice? Where are you now?
I'm today physically, I just landed in Paris. I'm here. There's a big conference. There's EDHEC happening in Paris this week. So I'm here
Okay.
for a conference. But right now I'm currently living still on the French Riviera in Nice. So
Living
yeah.
the life. When Sandra talks to me about her life down there, I get a little jealous.
Yeah.
It's so, Nina, Carly touched on something. We're going to get into now the meat of your experience. It's super interesting with these programs in Europe because of the diversity of the cohort. So Nina has the ESSEC, just to let you know, the ESSEC MBA, when I started working on it, it was number 97 in the world on the FT. Today it's number 47. And it's because they're doing a lot to improve value for money, aims achieved, and diversity, both in the teaching faculty and the cohort. Nina, your cohort was extremely diverse. We know that we learn a lot from professors, but it's the most important people that you have in the classroom. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about your diverse cohort? Please be honest with people. You don't get along with everybody all the time. Some people don't pull their weight during group projects, but how did that add to your experience? Because you're an interesting case. You chose to come to France to do your program here, whereas cohorts in the United States are typically more American. So how did this diverse cohort change and shape your experience?
Yeah, great question, Patty. Thank you for that. I think I precisely chose to come to France or a program like ESSEC because of its diversity. And I've always been someone who is highly attracted. Firstly, I actually wasn't even born in America, so I'm an immigrant in America, as is. I'm a foreigner where I lived for 14, 15 years. I lived in India for 12 years, then in California for about 15. So I've not truly been in my place of origin for a very, very long time. So I think being outside the box is comfortable for me in a strange way. And I think I really value other people's opinions, other people's cultures and perspectives. And that's something that I really sought. So coming to ESSEC was a really big factor. And I believe I asked this question during my interview as well, the level of diversity, and not just in terms of nationalities but also age demographic. That's really important. I think we really sometimes don't think about that. I mean, I was 25 when I started the MBA, super young, quite frankly not very experienced, if I may be honest. And I was in a classroom with some people who had 10, 15 years in a corporate environment. Like Carly mentioned, she was with PwC. We had classmates from similar banking backgrounds or even finance backgrounds, and it was so interesting to see the way they think, the way they work, how some of them are super hyper analytical, but let's say are struggling with things like creative analysis because that's not in their comfort zone, versus that's more my speed. If I have to work too many with numbers, it's overwhelming for me at that point. So, but don't worry, we had finance class. I swear it was very good. So I think it's extremely important, and also having exposure to a diverse set of professions and career opportunities. I think this is super key, because very often we come in with, this is my expectation, I want this kind of job, but actually don't know what this kind of job looks like. And in another country, it could even be something completely different.
Yeah.
For example, I do currently, my role is product development manager for a Korean skincare brand called Herborian. It's under the L'Occitane group. And when I came into ESSEC, my dream was to really do like product development, pretty much what I'm doing now for L'Oreal. And when I graduated ESSEC, that's exactly what I did. But but to be honest, I didn't really understand what that job meant until I really spoke to people who did that role and have been doing that role for a very long time, who have very high expertise in the cosmetic world, in everything. So all of this was super, super, super important. And also meeting other people who are foreigners like me living in France. I think, getting all that exposure, having all the meetings that we had over Zoom, in-person meetings that were crammed after May 2021 because everything became open.
Yeah.
We remember that.
Yeah, that's
Um,
honestly, yeah.
super,
It took a
super,
lot. People that went
yeah,
through MBA during COVID were very brave.
honestly.
Like I said,
6+ months of my MBA were pretty much online,
yeah.
but to no one's fault, of course. It's just another experience. But I think it helps us appreciate relationships as well. So I
Well
would say
said.
diversity is super, super key in every definition of that word.
Carly, let's talk a little bit about your immersion in French culture because you are very much, it doesn't get more French than the south of France down there. What were some interesting things or travels that or experience in terms of cultural differences that you were able to experience during your MBA and that perhaps you continue to experience just until today, you know?
I often I often get confused because I can play with my accent a little bit. Sometimes I'll let a couple words slip and they're like, ah, this is why you're not from here. I'm very smiley. I'm probably one of the smiliest people that most of my cohort would say, always. And so I feel like that has actually really helped me open doors in France because there is a resting French face that does exist here. So I often walk around with a smile on my face, and people just, generally tend to be a little bit nicer, I would say. But the French just kind of have like a joie de vivre that kind of just transcends everything that they do. And I am here for it. I mentioned in my previous degree that I was more on the social aspect. So I would definitely say that I love a good apéro. I like a good spritz,
Yeah,
and
very
so
good.
it's mild all the time. I'm from the Great White North, so in the south, it's mild. Like I haven't worn a jacket in a long time, so that's been really nice. And so you can kind of just sit outside all year long, and
Yeah,
not freeze your buns off. And I love that. So I would say, I mean, I come from Montreal, so there are a lot of similitudes in terms of food and what to expect. It's definitely a lot cheaper here because you don't have to pay any import tax on wine. But I would also say one of the things that I didn't really realize was just how regional everything is too. So foods that you'll find in Nice, you won't find in Paris. Like they don't serve butter with bread in the South, and it like breaks my heart because it just get dry bread. But when I come to Paris, every time I'm here, I just get so happy because they just they give me butter. So I would
the
say
simple things, Carly. You've learned to appreciate the simple
I
things in
have.
life.
I would also say that, and I'm like not trying to knock anybody at all, but I would say, like, coming from a North American perspective, nobody really networks here. Like it's just,
True.
and I mean, maybe other people can tell me I'm wrong, but my experience what has really set me apart. I would say, in just getting the opportunities that I've had and doing the things that I've had is because I just ask. I
Yeah.
also come very much from a perspective of don't ask, don't get.
Yeah.
And so I bring that kind of to anything that I do. And so I've reached out to a lot of people. I would say that the alumni network here is also super strong. I would say it sounds, Nina, that your experience with ESSEC is the same, but for EDHEC as well, like the alumni is just, they're so amazing. So I could reach out to anybody and just say, hey, I'm looking to just learn a little bit more about you or looking to build my network. And people are just kind of so shocked by it that they're just like, yes, let's talk. So that's really nice. And I would say that the French, as to what you were saying earlier as well, is like very relationship oriented. So the way that you do business here is maybe a little bit different. Like it's, you know, Zoom existed and it was a means to an end during a certain period of time, but people really do appreciate sort of an in-person sort of meet and greet as well. They love to connect. And maybe that's just sort of standard across all post-COVID sort of worlds. But I would say that the French in particular, from my perspective, just love to actually meet in person as well. So you can assess somebody's height.
Carly, while I have you, and then Nina, get ready because this question will come to you too. We'll close out the school experience. give me a couple highlights of your MBA program. It could be something that happened within the classroom or outside the classroom, just a couple of things that when you think about your MBA, they're the one or two things you walk away with.
Ooh, okay. So, for those that are unaware that are on this call, an MBA is really about putting you with in as many group settings as possible, mostly because working in groups can sometimes really suck.
Yeah.
And so, and you never really get to choose your colleagues unless you are the founder yourself. And oftentimes you will, in the future, you will manage teams that you adopt. And so you don't necessarily get to choose them either. So it's about making the best of whatever situation you have. So one of my favorite things, I'll say I was in a global cohort. So I had in my first semester group, I had a Japanese who had been a professional ballet dancer in Monaco for 16 years. I had a Frenchman who had actually he had only ever studied in France and had never actually worked professionally in France, but had worked in oil and gas completely outside of France. Like we're talking UAE, Middle East, and then also in the US. So he was like effectively someone kind of like you, Nina. It's like,
Yeah.
was somewhere and then literally had his entire sort of career elsewhere. So 15 years outside of France. I had an Indian who had spent most of his career actually in Dubai, then moving to France, and then a Mexican, and me. And so we had a range of, I think it was 26 years old to 36 years old within. And I remember our first sort of like meeting, and we sat down after, and we went for we went for an apéro after we got paired together. And it was just one of those things where you just sat there, and it was just like, it was just so cool. I felt like that had the United Nations like sitting around me, and we were just sitting there and just, comparing notes and talking about why are we here. And that was probably that was one of my first days, and that was an amazing, amazing experience. And then I would say as well, there was a couple like really great projects that really just get you thinking. And like, again, like another thing that I like to say always and often is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was just like, I loved asking questions. I loved sort of hearing other people ask questions and seeing sort of what they were thinking about. Similar to what Nina had said earlier about like sitting in a classroom and like you have different ages, but you also have people that come from completely different backgrounds, whether that's cultural, whether it's from education, whether it's from their experience or their sector or their industry. And so it's really interesting to actually share notes on like, well, this is what somebody in manufacturing would have done. Well, this is what it's like as a professional athlete. Like it's just, they can be so different. And so the way that you can approach a problem can be in so many different angles. So that to me was just, that was really cool. I'm very curious as a human being, and just being able to kind of see that from so many different layers and levels was awesome for me.
No, and I think that one of the biggest things that MBAs need to make sure that they're highlighting on their LinkedIn and on their resumes, the fact that you have that experience dealing with diversity of opinions. And it's such a superpower. Nina, on to you. What are, COVID aside, what are some high points of your experience during your MBA in France?
I would say kind of some points similar to Carly, in the sense we had some really incredible projects which really stood out to me, and that feel like, I don't know, in some way a bigger accomplishment than some others. We had a really, really interesting and very intense week called the Digital Week. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, half my MBA was essentially online. So why would I enjoy something that's still digital even more? But I think this project was really, really cool. So for some context, ESSEC, I don't know if they still do this, but they essentially had a Digital Week program competition, if you will, in which they would essentially work with partner companies. So this would be aligned with also the students' interests. So in our case, we had companies all from different sectors. We had, I believe, Capgemini representatives. We had L'Oreal. We had, I think the year after that, they had LVMH. So it keeps changing. And these companies essentially give you a case study. So this is your chance to get not only exposure to the company and get their feedback directly on some projects, but also for you to work in really small groups in sectors that you're interested in. So for me in particular, I always knew I would continue to work in cosmetics. So I was working on the L'Oreal project, and we had to pitch something for Kiehl's, which is a very big American skincare brand. for those who might not be familiar. And it was such an incredible experience, super, super intense. I was literally on cup noodle diet for 1 week. My skin was not looking its best, let's say, ironically, by the end of this. However, I think working for so many hours with my very small but very dedicated team was such an incredible experience. We had a coach who was, with there mentoring us every day, giving us a few minutes per day, give us feedback. This is what do you think? How will you pitch this? And even down to presentation on PowerPoint. I mean, it sounds stupid, but like the presentation of PowerPoint for a beauty company is very big, actually. And then finally, our team actually won. So it was a really incredible experience. We not only got recognition from L'Oreal, we got to present to their executives of Kiehl's on a European level. So this kind of exposure is so precious. I don't even know how I would pay or organize for something like this. To be honest, it's such an incredible experience. So I think this was a big highlight for me. Another one was maybe more on the social aspect as well, to be very honest. After 6 months of like literally everything online, I just needed human contact. And I think the university really did a lot, but kind of condensed in a very a short amount of time to give us the in-person experience. So what's unique about ESSEC is we had field trips, which were really, really stand out. And I think another reason why I chose this program over others. We traveled, we went to Milan, we went to the Netherlands, and we also went to Florence. So a couple of cities in Italy and a couple in Netherlands. And we got in-person experience with people in the craft we're interested in. For example, we had exposure to high jewelry professionals, we had exposure to fashion professionals, and this was so honestly priceless, because again, I wouldn't even know how I would organize something like this if left, to myself. And this kind of exposure, meeting the CEO of Versace, having, asking him questions directly, like how would I even organize this? So I think these are such incredible experiences, and this is what really makes my MBA stand out more than the classes, to be very honest with you.
I hope there's no professors watching this.
Yeah, me too.
So we're starting to wind down. The most important thing that people really want to hear from you ladies is a piece of advice. So for those who are considering business education in France or in Europe, what is a piece of advice that you would give to them through your experience or your searching? What would you want them to walk away with? Carly, we'll start with you. I saw you noting down something, so.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people kind of get into school and they get into an MBA and they kind of approach it the same way that they do their undergrad. And so it's like, it's a competition to get to the highest grade and whatnot. And, Patty, maybe this isn't something that you want to hear, or maybe something you don't fully agree with, but the first month was overwhelming. Like a 1-year
Yeah.
program is really, really intense.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely trauma bonded with a lot of my colleagues from my MBA. So they will be my friends forever because we went through some pretty intense, cup of noodle diets for almost the entire year. So it was intense. But I would say, like, you're there when you do a finance course or when you do an accounting course or you do any course, you're not there to become a professional accountant. You're there
Yeah.
to understand how things reflect in other parts of the business and why they're important and how they fit into the bigger puzzle piece of like running a company or working in management.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important that a lot of people kind of didn't have sight of initially, and we're really, really stressed out about like getting the best grades. And it's not about getting the best grades, but understanding how will I will hire a CFO. I will never be a CFO. I did not do finance as my undergrad. So that is something that requires a very specific, unique skill that I do not
Yep.
have and I do not wish to have. But I need to know how to talk to my CFO. Otherwise, I would have done finance. I have no interest. But, so I think that's one of the things. And I would also say, like, how you act in a classroom is how everybody is going to think that you act in a boardroom. So also recognize that the people that are your peers in your classroom may be your future board members. They might be your
Absolutely.
future collaborators. So I do know specifically I was asked to recommend somebody, and I did not, because I did not like how they acted in the classroom. And so I did not want to put them in, I did not want to give them a referral. And I think that's really important to note. And I don't think I was being unfair. I think I was just being
Yeah.
honest. So again, how you act in a classroom is how I will assume you will act in a boardroom. And so I think those are sort of some key takeaways. It's like, and then just be honest about why you want to be there. I
Yeah.
was honest with myself. I wanted a sabbatical. I wanted to step away. I needed time to really think and reflect. And I couldn't do that while working, because coming out of COVID as an HR professional, I was burnt out, definitely. Trying to manage a big department of people without much sort of support as an HR professional is really tough. I can't even imagine doing an MBA entirely fully online. That also sounds really tough. So good for you, Nina. Kudos for surviving that. But I would say, like, just be honest with what you're looking for. I mean, you know, there can be programs. Again, we talk about value for money. I think that programs, if you compare them to a North American standard, programs in France are affordable. Also, the fact that you're only out of school you're only out of the workforce for 1 year is amazing. I didn't want to be out for 2. At my age,
Yeah.
if 2 felt instrumental, 1 felt feasible, if I could say that. So those are
No, Carly, thank you for that. I think that the asking yourself why you're doing this was also the advice that the other panels have given. Nina, the final word, piece of advice.
So I will piggyback off what Carly said. I couldn't agree more with, in fact, everything she said, but just touching to her last point about being honest with yourself, so important. I mean,
Yeah.
we're all at different phases of our lives. I was 25, like barely, I don't know what I was doing. And I didn't even feel like I wanted to spend 2 years of my life doing an MBA.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine someone who's much older. So I think be honest, and also, you know, look at it from every facet, every 360
Yeah.
part of your experience, because the way I approached my MBA was a backward planning approach. What do I want at the end, and how
Yeah.
do I get it? And it doesn't mean I pick the number one, you know, MBA school on FT rankings because it's number one. While it's an excellent school and there's no question about the quality of education you'll get, does it serve me? Does it serve my purpose? Because
Yeah.
not everybody, you know, will do the same program I did because it doesn't serve their purpose, and that's totally okay. So I think, don't be arrogant about your choice, and I really say this very with clarity because there's a lot of this in, let's say, the background I come from, which is Indian culture, which people like the name, they like the exposure, they like the ranking. It's nice, you brag about your friends, your family, and while that's great, it should serve you at the end of the day, because in the end
Yep.
it's your life and it's your choice and your career, and no brand name of anything is really gonna alone do that for you. So
Well
that's my
said.
biggest advice. And my other point is be humble. I think this is super important because a lot of people going into an executive education have such a high level of arrogance, and I will be the first to raise my hand and say I was one of them. Despite being young, I think I came with a very American mindset, to be very frank with you, into France, saying, hey, you know, I read online, they say average MBA person globally earns XYZ, so therefore I think I can, blah, blah, blah. And I was super wrong because I came in with a very arrogant attitude, and I'm being very open. um, and I applied to other business schools, you know, like HEC, for example, because it said, you know, this, and in the end I chose ESSEC because it served my purpose. It fit my need. I didn't have to leave the workforce for 2 years. I very proudly have paid for my MBA myself, so that was really important, that I
Yeah.
don't be out of the workforce, and I have a good value for money program,
Yeah.
with a strong alumni, and fits my needs. So that's exactly the choice I made. And in the end, I humbled down very rapidly once I learned that what I thought would happen post MBA did not happen. But I made it in a good way. I think it's important for us to have this experience so we really learn from it. I mean, the other point is, you know, we take the MBA to make mistakes. It's okay. It's okay
Absolutely.
if we cannot balance the financial documents. It's okay if we don't understand these things. It's okay if we don't know why the last mile is the most expensive and the most important. But you take the time to learn, and then you hire people who do know that expertise. So you focus on your expertise, and you know, that's it. So
Nina, well said. I think that that level of humility is important for everything just in life. We
mhm.
have a question, which I think the answer is no. Did either one of you come with partners or children to the MBA?
I did not. A lot of people in my class did. So it
Yeah,
was very much, I can speak on that, just because there was a lot of, there were, because of the average age of the program that I did, especially, and I think that's why one-year programs also tend to attract maybe a more mature profile. So I think the average age of our program was 33 or 34. I would say
yeah,
about a quarter probably came with their partners, if not a third. And so they really made it sort of like a family project. And so there was support from the schools for visas for their partners as well.
yeah. That's usually, I would agree with you with the 1-year programs. It's usually how it
Mhm.
works.
Yeah, so
But
you wouldn't be alone if you're thinking about coming with a partner. That was there's it's pretty common, at least in my program. What about you, Nina?
I think for me, our average age was a little bit younger. It was maybe 31, if I remember, or 30. I may have decreased it a little more.
yeah,
Um, but I think, and like you said, there are several people I know who had young kids. I had one classmate who literally had baby on her lap while we were in meetings and, group collab Zooms, which were often, you'll hear me say Zoom a lot. But and then we had one classmate who had his very very young child in the south of France. He would go to see. So everyone had their own situation. We also had a couple of people who had partners living in France, and they came to France because it fit their need, it fit their family situation. And I think it's totally doable, totally possible, especially, but to keep in mind, my time was also COVID, so it was much easier for people to move around if their partner needed to work from home, which everybody was anyway. So I think much more feasible.
we do not give baby MBAs out for children who follow the courses with their parents. I have been known to give that to women who give birth during the MBA, saying, look, the kid listened to everything, was in every lecture, so they technically get a baby MBA. But I want to thank you two for your time. I really appreciate you sharing your experience. I think now is really an important time for the world to discover the wonderful education opportunities that we have in Europe. So I'm happy that you two were able to talk about France and two programs that I adore and love dearly. Thank you for your time. This session will be recorded, so you might get a lot of questions afterwards via LinkedIn. Thank you, ladies, and have a wonderful evening.